Hey guys, welcome back to the Backhand Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Vilchis, and today is the Purple Pill, where we talk about world news and give you a little bit of Christian perspective behind what we're talking about. Happy New Year, guys. Welcome back, and we're back on our regular schedule. Mondays is our Purple Pill, Wednesday is our highlight reel, and then Friday is the Word, where we go into a Bible study. The highlight reel is where we go into anything that's happening in entertainment, anything with going with sports, and we just talk about it. But today, specifically, we talk about stuff that's happening in politics. Now, today, we're going to go over a couple issues that are going on right now. We're going to briefly touch on one thing. For United States news, McCarthy did win the House Speaker for the Republicans. That happened just recently, so I just wanted to touch on that. We won't really go into much detail about that, but the only thing that you need to know is that 20 Republicans were holding out on even voting on McCarthy becoming the representative because of how moderate he was. But we're moving on from that. One thing that's happening specifically in Africa, which I do want to touch on, but I don't want to talk about it simply because I have been doing research on it, but I feel like it's not doing justice enough to talk about it, and I want to be more well prepared to be able to talk about it because it is a complicated situation. But prayers for people in Nigeria right now, specifically with the kidnapping crisis that's going on. A lot of things are happening specifically in Nigeria, and I think next week I want to do more research on it, so next week I'll be able to go more in depthly about it. Maybe you want to learn more about it, but right now they're having a kidnap crisis right now, and a lot of people are dying, so it's just some news on that. The next thing that we're going to be talking about is, briefly, we're also going to talk about is what's happening in Ukraine. So the only updated news on what's going on with Ukraine right now is that now the Western allies, specifically United States and Germany, have actually joined France in sending armored fighting vehicles to Ukraine, a move seen as a significant boost to its military capability on the battlefield. So this has been a huge controversy because some people have been trying to stay out of it. The BBC News, World News reported on this. It was and it says, for months, Ukraine have been asking Western allies to supply tanks, and although these vehicles are less powerful, the decision to send them sets a new precedent. So the vehicles that they would be sending to fight Russia would be less powerful, but it does set a new precedent. Ukraine said it was a great victory. Germany has long hesitated over beefing up weapons deliveries to Kiev. But after France's Emmanuel Macron announced on Wednesday that the AMX-10 RC light combat tanks would be sent to Ukraine, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and U.S. President Joe Biden said later that they too were sending armored fighting vehicles. The U.S. said on Friday that they were part of a $3 billion package of assistance. The German leader has also emphasized that Berlin would not act alone, be it when it came to tanks or armored fighting vehicles. The government in Berlin rejected reports that President Macron had bounced him into a decision, but some commentators in Berlin believe a taboo has been broken. Until now, Western countries have stopped short of sending this kind of equipment, but Germany has taken part in swap deals under which Ukraine receives old Soviet tanks from Slovakia, Czech Republic, Slovenia, and Greece, which then receive more modern German equipment. Providing Kiev with Soviet tanks made sense as they required no extra training. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed his thanks, and Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei McLean said it was merely the first taboo that needed to be broken, as Kiev wanted combat aircraft, warships, and more. The $3 billion U.S. package is reported to include as many as 50 Bradley fighting vehicles. The Pentagon said the Bradley was not a tank, but a tank killer. The White House said it would take some time before they arrived in Ukraine. The funding is also expecting self-propelled hot whistlers, mine-resistant vehicles, and GMLRS precision rockets, while $682 million is beginning to allies on the NATO's eastern flank. So this is very big for Ukraine as they are continuously fighting with Russia. The war is not over. Some people are kind of passed over on what's happening in Ukraine, but it's still going on and they're still fighting. And the fact that the U.S. and now Germany is sending stuff over to help Ukraine fight off Russia is a big move, because if anything, this kind of does put us on the forefront of endangerment, of being pulled into this war, specifically Germany, because Russia said that if Ukraine is signed over with Germany, then a lot of embargoes would be things that would block their trade would come into play, because Russia wants to control over the the Black Sea, which is connected right by Ukraine. So big. This is kind of huge because it's like it does put us at the forefront of everything and could cause other serious stuff that's going on. And another news is that we're going to moving on from Europe specifically into. There's not much to talk about with Asia right now. Simply the riots are still going on in China specifically, so pray for them. As if you don't know what I'm talking about, we did talk about this in a previous podcast, and to give you a brief summary, a lot of people are tired of the COVID restrictions. Yes, the COVID restrictions are still going on in China, and it's becoming harsher, and it's becoming too much for them, and they are trying to get out of this oppression. Now, moving on into South America, specifically, Lula was elected president. And there's a lot of tension within Brazil between the left and the right. And the people on the right are calling for military action to get rid of Lula. And now a lot of people be like, why? So BBC also reported on this. It says, the scenes of chaos shouldn't have become a surprise, though. Throughout Jair Bolsonaro's term, Bolsonaro was the former president who was going against Lula for the presidency. Bolsonaro is of the right wing, and then Lula was of the left wing. He had repeatedly questioned the efficiency of Brazil's institutions, accusing the Supreme Federal Court of being politically against him and the voting system of being prone to fraud, despite no evidence to support those claims. In short, he may not have masterminded the invasion, but he cannot be separate from his supporters took on his narrative wholeheartedly. So what happened was they kind of invaded the capital and everything. Since he lost the elections in October, Mr. Bolsonaro has gone very quiet. He had not publicly conceded defeat. He flew off to Florida to avoid having to hand over the presidential sash to Lula, and he allowed his most ardent supporters to remain angry over the democratic election that he legitimately lost. Last week, his former vice president said that the silence of leaders sowed chaos in the society, and that it was what Jair Bolsonaro is guilty of at the very least. Tension has definitely been building these past few months. Camps were set up across the county in front of army headquarters, with protesters loyal to Bolsonaro calling for military intervention. And then in December, supporters set fire to federal police headquarters in Brasilia. Another supporter was arrested for allegedly trying to set off a bomb before Lula's inauguration on the 1st of January. Brazilians feared what happened on Sunday was only a matter of time. Perhaps more worrying is the role of the authorities playing in allowing this to happen. It's no secret that many security forces are far more on the side of Mr. Bolsonaro than Lula. Mr. Bolsonaro's narrative throughout his term about the security in Brazil and keeping people safe made sure he had allies within the police and the armed forces. Brazilian's Governor Elias Arocha was a longtime ally of Jair Bolsonaro, has been suspended for 90 days. The security Secretary of Brasilia, Andreas Torres, was also dismissed over yesterday's events. To what point then were the authorities working with the protesters to allow such an invasion of top security government buildings? So basically what happened with the capital in the States basically happened in Brazil. So pressure is building outside of Brazil too, with Mr. Bolsonaro still in Florida. Joe Biden has already been asked to extradite the former Brazilian president to face questions back home. While Lula's administration tries to get to the bottom of where it all went wrong to challenge remains, he has a formidable opposition to these protesters, so could this happen again? So the reason why so many Brazilians are upset that Lula was elected president is because for them, the current president was jailed in 2017 for corruption and spent 18 months in prison before the convictions were annulled. So he was in prison in 2017 for corruption, but they were annulled. And they say that a corrupt politician who belongs in prison, not the presidential palace. Now, the writer of this is something that this is, in my opinion, biased reporting of the BBC News. They say they falsely accused him of being a communist, wanting to impose a regime like Venezuela or Cuba. They won't be convinced by anything else, and they won't give up the fight for democracy, as they call it. This, for me, is like everything that I was saying previously was like everything that's going on. This is, I think, a little bit biased, saying that that Lula is not a communist. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I did a little bit more research. Now, there's two heads of perspective on this. Is Lula a communist or not? And now a lot of people are like, why does it matter? Okay, in South America, it's a big deal because what happened in Venezuela, the economic crash, everything going to crap, the military takeover, a lot of people fleeing. In my country, in Peru specifically, we took in a lot of Venezuelan refugees, and the big fear is the socialist wave that is happening right now, which took over Cuba, which is taking over Venezuela, which is kind of leaking into Argentina and to other countries, specifically mine. So the big fear is that we do not want to turn into a communist country because of how the effects will happen on everybody that's going on right now. It will affect generations. It will affect our people massively, economically. Listen, I know that some people out there who do believe in the socialist aspects and the communist aspects of government. Now a lot of their points are valid. However, they are very detrimental and very, very dangerous. You have to look at the history of what takes place. Now, a lot of people might disagree with me and say, but Adam, like this could work. Now, in a perfect society, yes, but we're a very flawed society. As humans, we're very flawed. We are born into sin. We have all sinned and fall short of the glory of God, right? So, like, as much as a communist, like equality of being distribution of wealth and everything, as ideal as that sounds, it will never work because we're not a perfect society. Unfortunately, we are flawed, we're sinned, and we're gonna do bad things, and corruption leaks in, and what happens is the elite only gets stronger. Within a capitalist society, there is a chance for us to do it. Yes, there are things that allow people who are in a capitalist society to thrive better than those who aren't, but it allows a system where we have a chance to do so, and but you have to do it properly, of course. So just want you to know about that. Something to think about before you even do some research. I highly encourage this. Like everything that I say on this podcast, I encourage you yourself to go out and do your own research. Don't take everything I say for fact, because I'm just trying to let you guys know what's going on in the world, because I feel like a lot of times we are so caught up within ourselves and what's going on here, and sometimes we don't even know what's happening out in the world. And somebody who's grown up in another country and has like dual citizenship and has lived in both countries, I have had the opportunity and the privilege to be able to see what's going outside of what America is, and I want to encourage you to look out what's going on, but like look at it in a way that is intelligent. Don't just take one news organization as fact, because that could be detrimental to your ideals of what's going on. So take on both perspectives. Super important. Do your research. Do your research. This is important. Now, maybe you're a viewer who is from outside of America and you're listening in. I highly encourage you to do the same. Like, take on both perspectives, especially when it comes to American politics, because American politics, a lot of it, one side is being pushed out because of how they manage to influence social media. Now, you might be like, Adam, you're crazy, but I'm just stating not just the obvious, but I'm just stating, like, if you're seeing only one side all the time, maybe you're being fed biased news. Maybe you should take a moment to take a step back and listen to the other side. And I'm not just saying that for people on the left to listen to the people on the right, but also people on the right to listen to what people say on the left, to get a better understanding of what's going on, because it only causes strife and division. And George Washington even said at the beginning of the presidency, at the beginning of the foundation of America, said the thing that will destroy America is political parties, because it will divide us. So, and because we're brothers, we're supposed to love each other. So those who are quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to anger, and I highly encourage you to use that verse, write that on your heart when you're listening, because politics do get heated. So take time to think about that. Now back to the Brazilian thing. So there are two perspectives. Is Lula a communist? And those who say that he is, he's not. So the people who say he is tied. He has a friendship with Fidel Castro. So not only that, but he was jailed. So like everything has connection to Cuba with communist ideals. This is valid. Now on the other side, on the left, people say, there was a person named Fernando Moraes. Fernando Moraes was a writer, and he even said Lula was never a communist and he would never be one. Throughout his life, he never had any ties to the Communist Party. Few people in Brazil know Lula as well as Moraes. The writer has known Lula for about 50 years. He knew him when Lula was still simply a factory worker. He also written a noteworthy biography about the former president who is about to return to power. On the evening before Lula was arrested, alleged corruption in 2017, the same thing that people are accusing him of, Moraes asked him whether he was communist at heart, to which Lula wryly replied, there were 500,000 workers behind me in 1980, and I prevented a strike. I would have started a revolution if I had been a communist. But what did I do instead? I founded a party in a trade union headquarters. So people on the left are saying he's more of a union leader, not a revolutionary. He's not trying to create all these crazy stuff. So on the people on the left saying, well, he's not. The people are saying this, right, because of his ties to Fidel Castro. So it's something in perspective to look at. I personally think, I don't know what to think, to be honest. My heart goes out for those who are in Brazil. But like, I just want to emphasize this as a solid point to all Brazilians, is like, take a step back from how your heart feels and look at what the other people say, because maybe there is some validity in it and you're missing it because you're so blinded by what you're only seeing and what you're being fed. But one thing I will stand by is do not allow these communist deals to infiltrate our beloved continent, because it will destroy it, and I will stand by that. In other news, Israel and Palestine are fighting over the holy site. Now, the holy site, for those who don't know, is where the temple was built and now has a mosque on top of it. Now, those who are familiar, when it comes to scripture, Revelation declares that the temple will be restored, and the Antichrist will lay his throne there and claim dominion, and that's when a lot of the end times will begin. So this is a very important site. So right now they're kind of fighting over it. The Palestinian ambassador, Israel and Palestine envoys have traded accusations at the UN meeting over Israel's minister's visit to contest the holy site in Jerusalem. The Palestinian ambassador said Israel's displayed absolute contempt for the international community and demanded the UN take action. His Israeli counterpart accused the Palestinians of mounting a poisonous campaign to erase Jewish history. The minister's visit on Tuesday was seen by Palestinians as provocative. It was made by Israel's new national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, a far-right political leader known for part anti-Arab statements and once convicted of incitement to racism. Mr. Ben-Gvir's visit was his first public act since the government led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was sworn in 5 days earlier. The hilltop site is the most sacred place in Judaism and the third holiest in Islam. It is known to the Jews as the Temple Mount and the site of two biblical temples, and to the Muslims as Haram al-Sharif, the site of Muhammad's ascent to heaven. The entire compound is considered to be Al-Aqsa's mosque by Muslims. Jews and other non-Muslims are allowed to go to the compound, but not to pray. Though Palestinians see visits by Jews as attempts to change the delicate status quo. So right now, the Muslims do control the Temple Mount, and those Jews and anybody that are non-Muslims are allowed to go to the compound, to the mosque, but they're not allowed to pray. So that's like the big thing. Addressing the emergency meeting of the UN Security Council, Palestinian Ambassador Riyad Mansour accused the world body of inaction. What red line does Israel need to cross for the Security Council to finally say enough is enough and act accordingly, he asked. When are you going to act? Israel has displayed utter disregard for the sanctity of Palestinian life, the sanctity of international law, and the sanctity of Haram al-Sharif, yet the council remains on the sidelines. This is basically what I talked about in the last podcast of what's going on in Israel-Palestine. There's a lot of things going on right now with evictions and moving into territory, and there are a lot of suppression on the Palestinian part. Now, I will state my own belief when it comes to politically. I am pro-Israel, and that comes a lot from my Christian core beliefs, but I do not agree with the suppression of the Palestinians. That is something I will disagree with. You can agree with one thing, but you can disagree with something completely. I don't think the way that they're handling the Palestinians is wise. But as I know, and as a lot of Christians know, it is biblically prophesied that Palestinians and the Jewish nation will never get along. They will always be at war with each other. But it's unfortunate how this all is going on. Continuing, Riyad Mansour continues saying, our people are running out of patience. The record shows that Israel's persistence on this path does not lead to surrender, but to an uprising. Israel's actions have nothing to do with religious freedom and everything to do with unlawful attempt to alter the character, status, and identity of the city of Jerusalem. Israel's ambassador Gilad Andrade responded angrily, saying Palestinian objections were motivated by Jew hatred and anti-Semitism. For years now, the Palestinians have orchestrated and advanced a poisonous campaign to obliterate any trace or connection between the Jewish people and the Temple Mount. He said they exploit every means, both in words and actions, to promote these lies. This insidious plot, he said, comes directly from the top of the Palestinian leadership. That the personal threats of the Palestinian representatives speak volumes. He said this was absurd. The Security Council has felt it necessary to discuss the peaceful 13-minute visit of the Jewish minister to the holiest Jewish site. The very fact that this meeting was held is an insult to our intelligence, he said. The Holy Compound is the most sensitive site in the Israel-Palestinian conflict. Situated in East Jerusalem, it was captured by Israel from Jordan in the 1967 Middle East War. Under a delicate set of arrangements, Jordan was allowed to continue in its historical role as custodian of the site, while Israel assumed control of the security and access. Muslim prayer continued to be the only form of worship allowed there, although a bar on Jewish visits was lifted. Palestinians argue that in recent years, steps have been taken to undermine the status quo, with Orthodox Jews often seen praying quietly without even being stopped by the Israeli police. The number of visits by Jews have swelled in the past few years, something Palestinians claim is more superstitious attempt to take over the site. So that's what's going on in Israel right now. That's kind of big news, in my opinion, because it's kind of leading into something that might be going into the rebuilding of the temple if they take over that site. In my personal opinion, it's like worship. It should just allow them to worship. But that's just my opinion. In the final news of our segment, we're going to be talking about El Chapo's son. El Chapo's son's name is Ovidio Guzman Lopez. He was arrested. Now, this is big news. Now, the last time El Chapo's son was arrested, he was completely surrounded by the military. He made one phone call and he was released and literally walked off. And this is kind of a big thing that's been helping in Mexico. It's like how much the cartel has had control. Now, the new president has made sure that to crack down on cartel, and right now he just got and now El Chapo's son was arrested. Now there is an outbreak with the cartel against Mexico. At least 29 people were killed during the bloody operation to arrest the son of Mexico's drug kingpin El Chapo. The Mexican authorities say Ovidio Guzman Lopez, 32, alleged to be the leader of his father's former cartel, was captured in Colcan and flown to Mexico City on Thursday. But during and after the arrest, 10 soldiers and 19 suspects were killed. Furious gang members set up roadblocks, set fire to dozens of vehicles, and attacked planes at local airport. A further 35 military personnel were injured and 21 gunmen were arrested. Defense Ministry Luis Crescencio Saldivo said on Friday Mr. Guzman Lopez, nicknamed the Mouse, was extracted by helicopter and flown into the capital before being taken on to a maximum security federal prison. He is accused of leading a faction of his father's notorious Sinaloa cartel, one of the largest drug trafficking organizations in the world. His father, Juan El Chapo Guzman, is serving a life sentence in the U.S. after being found guilty in 2019 of drug trafficking and money laundering. His trial revealed some of the brutal details of how Mexico drug cartels operate. The 6-month surveillance operation to capture Mr. Guzman Lopez has the support of the United States officials, Mr. Salvador said. The U.S. had put in a reward of up to $5 million for information leading to the arrest or conviction, as well as that of the three of his brothers who were also thought to have kept their positions of the command in the group. But the federal judge in Mexico has now suspended any extradition process against them, according to the local media. The operation, which began at dawn in Colcoa in Sonora State, northwest Mexico, sparked a wave of violence from the armed cartel members. Now, going back to the fact that they won't extradite El Chapo's son, I understand why. It's a lot of country pride. It's like, we don't want to send it to U.S. Like, as a Peruvian, I understand. I don't want to extradite some criminal from our country to America because like we captured him. He's been affecting our country. We need to take care of him. However, the consequence this federal judge needs to understand, and I think he understands the weight of it, like there's a high potential he might escape, or they might just let him go because of the corruption, the level of corruption that the cartel has over the country. Moving on in the story, dozens of vehicles were set alight, and at least 2 planes at the Sinaloa airports were hit by gunfire and attacks blamed on the Sinaloa cartel. More than 100 flights were canceled at the local airports as a result. 2 Mexican Air Force aircraft were forced to make emergency landings after they were hit by gunfire from the cartel, Defense Minister Saldivo has said. Helicopters, gunships were deployed from the authorities to support the ground operation. Mexican President Andres Lopez said Mexican forces acted responsibly to look after the civilian population and avoid innocent victims. No civilian deaths have yet been reported, so that's good news. A further 1,000 troops are being sent to Sonora to help with the ongoing security measures. So this is big news. So like, if anybody has followed with the cartel, I definitely have. Stuff like that, it happens all the time down south, and the fact that they captured his son and they're making sure that they keep him and they're deploying the military, this is huge steps for Mexico as they are cracking down on the cartel. It's going to be a bloody war. Let me just say that. Colombia has been at war for at least 60 years against their cartel. So Mexico this is just like, that's been going on, and I pray for them heavily. So that's all the world news for today. Thank you for joining me. That's all you needed to, well, there's a lot more going on, of course, but that's all I've brought to you, and I hope that has been insightful for you and informative of what's going on. Let's be praying for everybody that's going on, everything that's been happening, and pray for them. And to always have, and I'll remind you, slow to speak, quick to listen, slow to anger, and keep that philosophy in life wherever you go. Now I'm going to pray us out. All right, dear Lord, thank you for everything you've given us. Thank you for this opportunity to be able to worship and have faith in you, especially in America, of the security of that within us. I pray that you will allow all these people to be able to have some peace as things are going crazy in the world. I pray for people in Nigeria. I pray for the people in Ukraine. I pray for the people in China, and I pray for the people in Brazil and in Mexico and in Israel, all the chaos that's going on there. I pray that you will give them all safety as it continues, and to allow us to be able to minister those and just be able to spread your word and to spread your love and your gospel. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you guys for joining me, and I will see you guys on Wednesday. It's going to be hype. Peace.